In this video, we're going to introduce the graphing of a sine function. So let's start off with the parent function, y equals the sine of x. So remember with the function, we have an input and then it produces an output. So the input is going to come from whatever values are down below. The output will be represented on how high or low we are from this x-axis. The first thing I would like you to do is to recognize that we have a hidden 1 in front of the x and a hidden 1 in front. So when I first determine the period length, I take for sine and for cosine, I take 2 pi and always divide by whatever number is in front of the x. You are simply watching if you're with me in class. 2 pi divided by 1 is 2 pi. That means the length of one cycle, which is 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, is a length of 2 pi. With sine, cosine, and tangent, each of them has 4 unique steps. So it starts at 0, step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, to determine these are all equal in length along the x-axis, we always take the period length and divide it by 4. 2 pi divided by 4 reduces to 1 pi over 2. Please pick up your calculators. If you were not good at reducing, you could have taken 2 and divided by 4, hit math fraction, enter, enter. Notice I'm leaving out the pi and attaching it again over here. This very first thing I'm going to teach you is how do we come up with these steps below. The first step is 1 pi over 2. The second step is it's the second step times the x scale, which is 1/2, which is 1 pi. The third step, so 3 times the x scale. And if I get a decimal, I turn it back into a fraction. 3 pi over 2. This is one cycle. Once I've determined the x scales, I'd like you to please grab that unit circle that you were provided today. These are the inputs. These are the input values. So here we go. 1 pi over 2. I'm placing that right here. Again, I'm taking 1 pi over 2 and I'm multiplying by whatever's in front. 1 pi over 2 times 1 is 1 pi over 2. Please find 1 pi over 2 on your unit circle. Again, you are provided a large unit circle. Here's 1 pi over 2. For me, it's right here, at the same place, 1 pi over 2. The output value is right here. Now, a lot of students ask me, like, how do I know which one is sine, which one is cosine? On your paper, using a pencil or pen, please write this down. Cosine of theta, sine of theta. A lot of students also forget which one goes first. And I had a student several years ago that reminded me. Just like we have the TV stations ABC, Fox, ESPN, well, one of them is CBS. And they use that acronym for cosine before sine. Cosine always comes before sine. I'm figuring out the output for sine. So I'm going to start this again. 1 pi over 2 times 1 is 1 pi over 2. So I go to 1 pi over 2 and I locate the sine. The output value is 1. From this portion, I get an answer of 1. And then I have to multiply it times the number outside. 1 times 1 is 1. So let's go up to a value of 1. And you're just watching me make a dot right now. You're just watching. What I should have started with was 0. I should have started with 0. Let's go back and do 0. So this is 0. You ready? So 0. 0 times 1 is 0. Then I find 0. The output for 0 is 0. 0 times 1 is 0. It's a lot of steps. Let's start with 1 pi next. So everybody come over here and you're watching. 1 pi times 1 is 1 pi. Please locate 1 pi on the unit circle. Here's 1 pi. The output for sine is 0. 0 times the 1 out front is 0. Let's go to 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2 times 1 is 3 pi over 2. Please find 3 pi over 2 on your unit circle. The output for 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. And we have one final step, our fourth step. 2 pi times 1 is 2 pi. So let's locate 2 pi, which is right here. The output is 0. 0 times 1 is 0. So now I've completed the 4 steps. This is a wave curve, so it does not make sharp points. It's waves. So I hit that point, down, hit that point, and I've just completed one cycle. One cycle measures a horizontal distance of 2 pi. It goes as high as 1 and as low as 1. So the distance from the midline to the highest or lowest is a distance of 1. Let's look at example number 2. My function is y equals 2 sine of 2x. Do me a favor and please draw an arrow to both 2's, the one before the x and the one in front of the function. How do we get started? The very first step is we're going to take 2 pi and we're going to divide it by whatever value is in front of the x. In this case, it's a 2. And then I'm going to simplify. Now, what if you're not great with simplifying? Then you grab your calculator. I'm going to exclude the pi, take 2 divided by 2, and we can see it simplifies to 1 pi. What does that mean? That means after 4 steps, that's one cycle. So we start here. We're at start. This is step 0. So ready? Step 1. Do it with me on your desk. 2, 3, and 4. We should be at 1 pi. But I'm going to do 2 cycles to the right. So here's 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I'm going to double. One cycle is 1 pi. If I double that, I should go out to 2 pi. I'm doing 2 cycles to the right, and I'm doing 1 cycle to the left. So 1 cycle to the left, instead of it being a positive 1 pi, it's a negative 1 pi. The next step we're going to do is we're going to learn what are all of these measurements. They're equal distances apart. Each step is. How do we figure that out? We take whatever was our period length and we always divide it by 4. So I can go to this very first step and I'm going to write 1/4 pi. Please pick up your calculator. We're going to exclude the pi symbol when I use the calculator as a tool. So I'm going to go to step 2 and I'm taking it times 1/4. If I end up with a decimal, I'll turn it into a fraction. 1/2 pi. I'm going to go to my third step, taking it times 1/4 but excluding the pi and turning it back into a fraction. My fourth step better end up with a 1 pi. Let's check. 4 times 1/4, it is 1 pi. I would like you to quickly do step 5, 6, 7, and 8. Go ahead. Now, once you've figured out 2 cycles to the right, we get to be lazy. When we do 1 cycle to the left, we literally just get to take this first cycle and reflect it over the y-axis. So this first place is a negative 1/4 pi, a negative 1/2 pi, and a negative 3/4 pi. Can I have an honest 1 through 5 on how well you understood my explanation of how do we determine the length of one cycle, called the period length? How do we determine the length of one x scale? And how do we use a calculator to determine these areas, which will be my inputs? 1 through 5, if that made sense to you right now. It's okay to be a 1. Okay, we're going to start at 0. So 0 is going to be my first input. You ready? Now, just for the purpose, again, you're using this, but I want to use a smaller one that shows up. So I'm going to put mine right over here. Okay, so 0 pi is what I'm going to start with. I'm going to write down 0 pi. That's what this is right here. This is 0 pi. It's the origin. So I come over here and I'm going to plug in 0 pi. So what's 2 times 0 pi? What's 2 times 0? 0. And 0 pi times pi is simply 0. So I'm right here at 0. And what is the output? The output for sine is 0. And then I have to take it times the number out front. 0 times 2 is 0. So everybody come over here and put a 0 down. Okay, let's do this slowly. Ready? So everybody has to listen. Here's my next one. I'm writing down 1 pi over 4 because that's what I'm going to plug in. That's my input. So I put it down here. For visual learners like myself, I'm going to write this down. Sine of 2 times 1 pi over 4. And then I'm going to take that later on times the 2 out front. Okay, now I want to reduce this. This is not 21. It is 2 times 1. 2 times 1 is? 2 times 1 is 2. And then what is 2 over 4? Well, if you're not great with simplifying in your head, take 2 over 4, hit math fraction, enter, enter. It reduces to what? 1/2. So this reduces to 1 pi over 2. Now I want to evaluate the sine at 1 pi over 2. So let's find 1 pi over 2. Please grab your paper and find 1 pi over 2. What is the sine value at 1 pi over 2? 1. So this whole area results in 1. And then when I take it times 2, I get an answer of 2. So I'm going to go all the way up to 2, and that's my output value. I'm going to try the next one. The good part is you only have to do 4 of these, and then you get to copy. If you're good at copying, this is when it's going to come in. Right? That skill is going to come in. Ready? Let's try this one right here. So I'm going to write down 2 times the sine of 2 times, okay? My input is 1/2 pi. So 1/2 pi, that's what my input is. When I take 2 times this, I only take the 2 times the top. 2 times 2 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is, so this really here is just 1 pi. Can everybody find 1 pi on the unit circle? 1 pi on the unit circle is right here. What is the output value? The output value is 0. So this part is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. So my output value is 0. Okay, with your partner, as I do it, I want you to do the same. I want your input value to be 3 pi over 2. This is tough stuff. 3 pi over 4. 3 pi over 4. And I want to figure out what is the output value. Ready? Get set. Working with your partner. Begin. Talking. Go, go, go. So 2 times 3 is 6. I have 6 pi over 4. Now for those that can reduce in your head, wonderful. If not, take 3 divided by 4, press enter, and turn it back into a fraction. This is equivalent to 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2. Now I need to find out where's 3 pi over 2. Well, here's 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2. What is the sine? The sine, the output is -1. So this whole part gives me -1, and -1 times 2 is -2. And now let's do our last. Please go on to your last step. It's the 4th step. I'm going to say it out loud for those that are struggling. So if you could whisper, I'm going to do the last one out loud. I'm going to make room just up here. So I'm going to write this down. I have 2 sine of 2. And now this is my input. My input is 1 pi. So I do the math here. 2 times 1 pi is simply 2 pi. So I want to figure out what is the sine of 2 pi. Here's where 2 pi is. The sine is 0. This portion equals 0. 2 times 0 is 0. Once you've completed 4 steps, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's time to copy. Remember, these are going to be curved. It's like a wave. It's not sharp. There is one cycle, and it repeats itself to the right, and it repeats itself to the left. So at 5 pi over 4, I'm going to go up to 2. At 3 pi over 2, I'm at 0. 7 pi over 2, I'm down to negative 2, and back up to that midline of 0. Now we're going to keep that curve going. Keep the cycle going. Down to negative 2, to the midline, up to positive 2, and back to the midline. Down, up, and down. All right, so the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify, a little bit quicker pace right now, I'm going to identify what the period length is. That's step 1. I'm going to take 2 pi and always divide it by the number in front of the x, which is a 2. This reduces down to 1 pi. So my fourth step, 0 step, 1, 2, 3, 4, this would be 1 pi. And then 5, 6, 7, 8, this would be 2 pi because it doubles itself. Then to figure out the x scale, I'm always going to take and divide by 4. That means this is 1 pi over 4. I'm going to grab my calculator just to illustrate how do I choose the second one. This is step 2 times 1/4. You're going to exclude the pi symbol and turn it back into a fraction. This is my third step, times 1/4, exclude the pi symbol and add that fraction. And I'm just going to keep going because I know what this is. So 5 pi over 4, 3 pi over 2, 7 pi over 4, and 2 pi. Now I get to put these on the opposite side. Reflecting over the y-axis is negative 1 pi over 4, negative 1 pi over 2, negative 3 pi over 4, and negative 1 pi. Your first 4 steps are your input. So this is 0, 1 pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and 1 pi. Those are my steps. 0 step, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so I'm going to start by writing this out. And I know I don't have a lot of extra space, so I'm going to grab a blank piece of paper. And we're going to show it right now. I'm going to write down this formula. So here's my function. So negative 3 times the sine of 2 times, and let's start with 0, or 0 pi. 0 pi times 2 is 0. So let's find where 0 is. Everybody locate 0. And what is the sign at 0? It is 0. What's 0 times negative 3? 0. So let's all go to find 0, 0. Now let's do the exact same thing with the next input, which is 1 pi over 4. It's my first step. So exact same thing. 1 pi over 4. I need to reduce this part. So I end up with 2 pi over 4, and 2 pi over 4 reduces to 1 pi over 2. So I want to know what is the sign at 1 pi over 2. The sign at 1 pi over 2 is 1. What is 1 times negative 3? Negative 3. So negative 3 is my output. So at this first step, I'm dropping down to negative 3 and making a dot. Let's do 1 pi over 2. That's my next, 1 pi over 2. Negative 3 times the sine of 2 times negative 1 pi over 2. Well, the 2 on top and the 2, excuse me, I wrote that down wrong. I meant this to be positive. The 2 on top and the 2 on the bottom simply are going to be eliminated. You can think in your mind, really, they're going to simplify to 1, and I'm left with 1 pi. I want to know what is the sign at 1 pi. So I grab my unit circle. At 1 pi, the sign is 0. So this equals 0, and 0 times negative 3 is 0. I'm just curious right now because it sounds like I'm just talking to myself, and I don't know if anybody's understanding. Can I have a 1 through 5 if this is making sense? Even if you weren't able to do it yourself? Okay, make sure you're focused up here. I'm going to do 3 pi now. So now I have negative 3 times the sine of 2 times, and again I'm going to go to the next input, which is 3 pi over 4. I get 6 pi over 4. Well, 6 pi over 4 reduces to 3 pi over 2. Here's 3 pi over 2. And at sine we have negative 1. So this equals negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3. So here, and I'm up to positive 3, right up here. And then my last one is going to be pi. And my last one, negative 3 times the sine of 2 times pi. Well, I get 2 pi. At 2 pi, the sign is 0. 0 times negative 3 is simply going to be 0. So here's my next question for you. Ready? Turn to your partner, whoever is taller between you and your partner. Explain to your partner, how do I come up with steps 5 through 8 and reversing it to the steps to the left? Ready? You have 10 seconds, go. Explain to your partner.